Hey, what's up you guys? My name is Angela and welcome to my YouTube channel. So in the last video, we left off the moment my mom ended up in the ICU. So now this video will cover her from the moment she entered the ICU to the moment we decided palliative care. Today is January 2nd, 2020, exactly 1 month from the day my mom had passed away. And I wanted to share this story on this specific day for a reason, and even though it's going to be uploaded in different bits, I know that I have recorded this on this day. I've spoken about it, I'm starting to talk about it with people, and I'm starting to be more open about it. So yeah, here's the story. So my mom entered the ICU on a Tuesday. I left off in the last video when the doctor had spoken to us, and the first 24 hours of being in the ICU are very, very critical. It really shows if your body can improve your vitals, if it can, you know, fight the traumacy? Is that a word? If your body can fight the traumatic events that you've been through. When I walked into the room, my mom was hooked up to the intubation tubes. There were several monitors around her. I remember I needed to get dinner because I just needed to get dinner. I took Ativan, I wasn't feeling well, I was anxious, so I needed to get some dinner, and so I think I went and got dinner, and I get a phone call, and they needed my permission to put a PICC line in my mom, so my mom didn't have like 50 billion tubes on her body, she just had one singular PICC line. I believe it was in her right area, or right arm. I'm not entirely sure where it was at, but I think it was in that area. The doctors just couldn't figure out what was wrong. Went to sleep that night, woke up the next morning, woke up several times in the middle of the night to make sure that she was still breathing. I was so scared. But I woke up when the surgical resident was doing his rounds. He came in, he asked my mom to wiggle her toes, move her hands, like her fingers. He asked her to give him a thumbs up, to squeeze his hands, you know, stuff, basic things like that. And she was able to do all of them, which was fantastic, which means her brain was functioning, and she was doing really, really well. I can't even remember how long exactly that we were in the ICU. I know we were in there until at least Friday, I believe. The next few days, they just talked about, you know, getting the intubation tube out of my mom, what happens after they take it out. I got the chance to look at my mom's scans because they were like, we don't know what's gonna happen, we still don't know why she coded, like all this stuff. And then I remember at one point the doctor came in and started talking to us, and I was kind of, like I've said before, my brain pieces things together. I don't know why I do it. My brain just seems to fill in the gaps. And I started to think. I remembered the medication that she was on before she went into the IC, or before she went to the CT machine, and I was kind of thinking there, and I called the critical care team nurse over, and I asked her, I was like, I kind of explained to her my theory. I explained it to my aunt first to make sure that I wasn't crazy, and then I was like, she was like, you need to tell the nurse, like, that's what you think. And so I called the nurse over and I said, do you think that it's possible that since my mom was on lorazepam, and the first time that she went into the CT machine, she panicked so hard that they had to take her out and give her a relaxant, that when she went into the CT machine the second time, it hurt her so bad, but her body was just so relaxed that she couldn't get up, essentially. She didn't have the strength within her to get up out of the CT machine like she did the first time and, you know, fight to get up and breathe, because the cancer had spread to her lungs. And so I was like, do you think that it's possible that her lungs just couldn't inflate enough in the position that she was in, and she panicked, and since she was so relaxed she couldn't get up herself, and her body just went into shock and overtime, and she coded. And she was like, that's a very good theory. And she was like, do you want to speak with the doctor? And I said yes. So the doctor came over, the ICU doctor came over, and he took me to another room, and I told him my theory, and he looked at me and he said, I think you're absolutely right. He was like, it's a very, very likely possibility, even though we don't have finite tests that indicate or show something of that sort. It's a big possibility that that's what had happened. And I was like, oh God, thank you. Like, that's some relief off my chest that I was able to solve what had happened with my mom. We went back. The next few days were just needing her to get stronger. We took the intubation tube out, and she was just on BiPAP, which can kind of be uncomfortable, but she hadn't eaten in like 3 days, wasn't drinking liquids. I did give her like a couple tablespoons of like applesauce, I think, and I gave her some, God, what was it? I think it was Coke. I gave her Coke, and she was able to kind of drink that. She was able to swallow it, but it hurt her very, very bad to swallow, so eventually she just kind of stopped drinking, so she wasn't getting like a whole lot of liquids and everything. So my mom wasn't really getting a whole lot of nutrition, and I think that was one of the most like depressing parts for me, is that she wasn't getting nutrition. She wasn't able to drink. It's hard being thirsty and not being able to drink anything or eat anything when you're starving. I mean, think of how like hangry you get as a person, and think about not eating for a week. Like a week with no food, when you're surrounded by food, but you can't eat it because of the condition that you're in. Like, that probably to me was the most awful part of everything. And I stopped eating in the hospital during this time, because I was like, it's just not fair. She can't eat, and I don't want to eat. Like, it makes me sick to think about the fact that I get to eat and she doesn't. And I remember being so upset, but my family was like, you need to eat. They were all like, you need to eat so that you can take care of your mom. So I would go out, and I think I had soup a few times. I think I had a grilled cheese maybe, but I was just not eating because I couldn't. It made me sick to my stomach to think that I could eat and she couldn't. But anyways, we were in the ICU, and then Friday rolls around, and my mom's breathing was getting very, very bad. It was extremely heavy. Her chest would rise like so far, and it was like short breaths. Like, she couldn't just grasp enough oxygen, so I was like, it was like so weird and mind-blowing to think about. Like, my brain just like, I can see it in my head, and it's scary. And she never should have had to go through something like that, and it makes me so angry. Okay, anyways, so this is when we started talking about next options. And the ICU doctor came in and spoke with us, and he said, Arline, like, we don't know if you're gonna get better. And he really looked at me and tried to emphasize it with me, and he even had like radiology and oncology come and speak with me. It was kind of useless because I already knew what I wanted to do, but my mom was still lucid, and it wasn't up to me. And I told him that. I was like, I already know the decision that I would make, but it's not up to me. I was like, it's whatever she wants. She needed to decide, and he gave my mom a few hours to discuss together what we would like to do. Ultimately, my mom and I decided together that palliative care, otherwise known as comfort care, was the best option, because one entire portion of her lung was tumor. It was cancer. When she first came into the hospital, I think they saw maybe a few spots, just like small spots on her lungs. And by the time she had gotten down to the ICU, this just shows you how aggressive this type of cancer was. Her entire left lung was just tumor and cancer. The entire left lung had just disappeared, and so she was ultimately breathing with one lung, and the cancer had already started to spread to the other lung, and there was just no stopping it. And he was like, we can continue to do radiology. It was actually very dangerous to even think about doing radiology though, because my mom still had a surgical incision on her neck, and she had only had it for about 2 weeks, and typically they want to wait around 6 to 8 weeks so it heals properly, so the radiation doesn't harm the incision. So he was like, we can do it, but he was like, radiation and chemo are very harsh on a person's body if you don't know. And he was like, I could give you now in comfort, or I could probably give you 2 really crappy weeks of chemotherapy and radiation. And it was in that moment that I knew what I wanted. As much as I hated the thought of losing my mom sooner, I knew that I wanted her quality of life versus her quantity of life. And that was what I told him. But I told him, that's what I told him when I told him that I knew what I wanted, but I said, it's all up to her. And that's when he gave us like the few hours to kind of think about it, and when my mom and I decided on it. He was like, whatever you want, you get it. And he was like, you want a steak, we'll go get you a steak. He was like, you want scooters or Starbucks, we'll go get you that. And he was like, Arline, what do you want? And my mom just said, I want to go home. And so that kind of spiraled into its own little story. We tried so hard to get my mom home, but to get from Omaha to our hometown, it was an hour and 45 minutes, almost 2 hours, depending on traffic, which can be very dangerous, and that's a very long ride in an ambulance. We didn't know if she was stable enough to make it, but boy did we pull every string in the book. We called like 3 different hospice places here in my hometown. We literally tried everything. And that's another thing that I hate so much, is she just wanted to go home so bad, and I couldn't give that to her, and I just wanted to. The offices are closed over the weekends, and so he said, if you make it to Monday and you're stable enough, we might be able to get you home. She just kept fighting and fighting and fighting because she wanted to go home so bad. I'm so upset that I didn't get the chance to get her home. So that was the ICU story. Thank you guys so much for listening in. As always, please don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and turn on the notification bell on if you want to be notified of the next time that I upload a video. Also, as a homage to me, please, please, please share this video with families and friends. My mom's story means so much to me. It needs to be spoken about, as well as my story needs to be spoken about. People need to talk about these things. These are very, very hard things to go through, but it's something that almost everyone in their entire life goes through, the loss of a loved one. So I feel like it should be something that's talked about, you know, openly. Even though it hurts so much, it's good to talk about it. So please share it with your family and friends. And in my next video, it discusses her palliative care journey, and we started that on a Friday. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you soon.